So, interestingly, a request came through from somebody whose handle is Miss Spooky69. Thank you for that. Interesting about tabard style clothing, particularly aprons and smocks. Now, like many fashions throughout history, the apron, tabard, pinafore, pinny, pinner, etc. started off as practicality and turned into a fashion. But like a lot of fashions in history, this also stayed a practicality. Now, the earliest recorded paintings we've got of tabard style clothing, apron wear, was for men going back to 1300s. Of course, we know that it goes back further than that, from Viking and Saxon drawings. The tabard style apron and clothing starts with the men for working or an extra layer of warmth. The cyclist was a simple rectangle style of piece of overclothing. And over time, the sides became stitched up and it became known as a sideless surcoat because of the open sides there. Noble women started to wear it as an extra layer. In the Middle Ages, tabards were worn by peasants, monks, nuns and soldiers. Ecclesiastical scapula was worn by the clergy, bishops and abbots, etc. And knights that decorated their clothing, their over tabard, with their coat of arms or the coat of arms of their king they were fighting for. They were used as an identification on the battlefield to make sure you didn't kill one of your own. In the 1500s, the fancy tabard went out of fashion and it's only staff, labourers, peasants, etc. that were wearing them then. But in the 1600s, they came back into fashion, particularly half aprons that were just worn as a decoration, embroidered with real silk thread and with satin materials. In the 18th and 19th centuries, they come in and out of fashion, and they were coming from washerwomen, milkmaids and workers alike. This milkmaid fancy fashion was called the pinner apron because it just pinned on the front, which went with the bergère hat called a milkmaid's hat. And the Victorians had aprons for utility and fashion, and magazines offered patterns for them. Many a girl learned to sew, making their own first apron. In the 1920s and 30s, women were emancipated from their tight lacing and corsets, and actually aprons and tabards and smocks became very popular, even as part as a dress wear. Domestic staffing was declining, skirts got shorter and so did the aprons to match. For the middle classes, aprons and smocks were needed. Even half aprons became fashionable again, that were frilly and flowery and almost reflecting the Victorian era. Look at these beautiful 1930s pleated aprons, colourful and jazzy. Look at the 1920s dress style apron here. They were also merging in with their clothing style. By the 1940s and 50s, aprons were virtually overall type, reflecting women at work during the war. In domestication, a full crossover apron was very useful, and this was the pinafore or the pinny. In the 1950s and 60s, inexpensive matching aprons for both sexes were very popular. They were highly practical, but highly decorative too. And look at this smock style apron. They had frills and flowering and applique. It wasn't unusual now to get an apron as a birthday gift. The 1970s and 80s now see a difference in aprons, seeing them becoming different from the clothing we were wearing and rather utilitarian. And this is when we see now the tabard or smock style apron becoming very popular. Fastening quickly at the sides, quick and easy to put on, and in materials like polyester that were easily washed, and you could own a few. 70s and 80s definitely saw a style of apron, a unisex style, and was called the Pinafore, the Pinny. Now, it is difficult to find photographs of women in this era in their smock aprons, maybe with their curlers in sometimes. You'd see them talking over the garden fence with each other, because people didn't want to be photographed now in their aprons anymore. Thank you very much, Miss Spooky69, for your really interesting and lovely request video all about aprons, tabards, smocks, etc. If you have enjoyed it, do join me again next time. Like, subscribe and take care till next time. Bye.